pastries and pies taste delicious. Martha Montgomery owned a little bakery shop in a quiet little village nestled along the eastern shore. Martha's Masterpieces, it was called. Business wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. Financially, things were starting to get tight for Martha. Her regular clientele just wasn't enough to keep the business afloat for much longer, and supplies were starting to get expensive. Martha was worried about the business, needless to say, and her home life wasn't much better. On one October day, things came to a head for sweet little Martha. As she was closing shop one night, her boyfriend came in to walk her home. It had been a rough day. Business was slow, customers rude, and due to a lack of funds, wasn't able to order a full week's worth of supplies. All Martha wanted to do was close up and go home. "How much money did you make today?" her boyfriend asked. She sighed. "I don't really want to talk about it. It was a rotten day." "It's always a rotten day with you, Martha. Why even keep this place open? It never makes any money. Do you ever stop and think maybe you're the reason this place doesn't make any money? That your pastries just aren't good?" Her boyfriend said smugly. Now, this wasn't the first time poor Martha had to hear these abuses slung at her direction, but at that very moment, she decided it would be the last. "That's it!" she screamed. Martha flew into a rage, picked up her rolling pin, and bludgeoned him to death. As she tried to compose herself, she panicked at what to do. She placed a bloodied rolling pin on the body and dragged him to the kitchen in the back. She thought and thought until it became clear. "I know what to do," she exclaimed. "Since times are so tough and supplies are short at the moment, this corpse will give me everything I need to get by for the week." Martha began carving the meat to perfection and rubbing it with all the finest herbs and spices. "Ah, yes, perfect," she thought. "After I cook this, it will go lovely with my meat pies." After she was done, only the bones were left. She had a kiln out back. She piled the bones in an empty flour sack, dragged the bones to the kiln, and cremated them. With flour being the cost of what it is, this will be perfect for my pastries. Half flour, half bone dust. That will help my flour supply last. Martha worked all through the night, baking up a storm, and by morning the display cases were filled with the freshest baked delights. Martha wrote up a new sign promptly advertising the freshest of ingredients, and an all-new menu, everything half off. That should get them here, she thought. Not long after she opened, she noticed the mayor's car pull up in front of her shop. The portly older gentleman got out of his car and walked in. He proceeded to tell her he was on his way to a meeting and smelled a heavenly aroma wafting from her shop. She thanked the mayor and gave him a complimentary meat pie. "This is a brand new recipe, Mr. Mayor. I hope you like it." Oh my, Martha, this is delicious. I don't know what you've done, but this is the best pie I've ever tasted." She thanked the mayor, and he proceeded to order a dozen pies and pastries to take with him to the meeting. "I'm going to tell everyone," he said as he walked out the door. She smiled and prepared for the day. The word got out by midday, and Martha's shop had never seen such business. Everyone was in love with Martha's new menu. This continued for the week. Pies and pastries were flying off the shelves. But on that Sunday, Martha was realizing that her supplies were running low. As she was closing, the door opened, and in walked the mayor and his wife. "Oh, Martha, I hope we're not too late. We were hoping to catch you before you closed." Martha looked up and smiled. "Ah, yes, Mr. Mayor. You and your wife are just in time," she said with a wide smile on her face and holding her rolling pin behind her back. The next morning, Martha opened up the shop with the display cases full of the freshest pastries and the most delicious smells wafting through the neighborhood. As she wiped the countertop, she noticed a stranger about to enter the shop. "Oh my, what is that smell? I can smell it from down the street. It's simply delicious. Everything looks so good. I don't know what to get." "Thank you," Martha said. "Try the pastry. Best in the village, I'm told. And you must have a meat pie. That's what I'm known for. And I just finished baking this batch this morning. The meat is fresh, and it's spiced to perfection. Here, have one." "Why, thank you very much." Delicious," the stranger exclaimed, with a look of pleasure on his face. "What's your secret? This is the best meat pie I've ever had." "Well, without telling you too much, the trick is the meat. I only use the freshest, locally sourced meat. It's really made all the difference. Trust me, no other shop in the village does it like I do," Martha said with a mischievous grin. "I don't think I've ever seen you around the village. Did you just move here?" Martha politely asked the stranger. "No, I'm just passing through. First time I've ever been here. As a matter of fact, I have to get back out on the road," the stranger replied. "Well, before you leave, how would you like for me to show you how these delicious pies are made and have a tour of my kitchen? And I'll even throw in a couple of complimentary pies for the road." The stranger nodded his head yes, and as she ushered him through the kitchen door, she turned and grabbed her rolling pin from the counter and thought to herself, "It's always wise to keep up with fresh supplies." I'm a serial killer. The title says it all, really. I'm a murderer. I'm on 23 kills now, and it's becoming more frequent. My first was at 15, when some asshole claimed I fouled him in football, and I was kicked out of the game. I slit his throat that very night in his own bed. I was never caught, and it was a huge thing in our little town for years. I honestly thought nothing of it. No remorse, no fear of what I'd done. I was just a little surprised I actually went through with it. I wasn't even that angry at him, but I still decided he deserved it. Perhaps I was just looking for an excuse to kill. My next was at 20, when my neighbor refused to return my hammer I'd let him borrow. This time, I used that very hammer to cave his skull in after I found it in his unlocked shed. Again, I wasn't caught, although I was questioned, but I put up such a good act of shocked fear and sadness, I was able to walk free after an hour. That night, I sat in my chair and thought about how I'd killed 2 people and felt no remorse, only pleasure. I made the decision in that very moment that I was going to travel the country, maybe even the world, to find new victims. My killing became less random over time. I started stalking my prey. They were still total strangers, and unlike my first 2 victims, they had done nothing against me. They were just unlucky enough to be chosen. I usually follow them for about a week before I can no longer resist the urge. In fact, I've been watching you for a few days now, and I think tonight may be the night I make 24 kills. How to kill people and never get caught. I killed at least 86 people over the years, and not only did I get away with it, but no one even knows anyone was murdered. They think they either killed themselves or it was some horrible accident. You wouldn't believe how easy it is. That is, if you are not too picky. It's all about timing. You have to be in the right place at the right time. For instance, my first kill was just pure luck. I never actually planned on killing him. We were just strolling along the cliff walk near my house one Sunday afternoon. I was in a bad mood. My dad had bought me a slingshot that day, but because I accidentally killed a crow, he took it off me and said he wouldn't give it back until I started acting more responsible. For the whole walk, I was on my best behavior, and as we were going over the last hill, where the path was at its skinniest, I apologized and politely asked him for it back. But he just laughed. Believe me, it will be a long time before you see that slingshot again, as he turned around to look at the view. I never meant to kill anyone. I just reacted and pushed him out of anger. Then he wobbled and fell over the edge. It was kind of his own fault, though. He knew how much I hated being laughed at. I ran straight home to my mom and told her that Dad fell off the cliff. Call 911. I was crying like a baby. The funny thing is, I was only crying because I thought I was going to get caught. How silly I was back then. It took years before my next kill. John. He was a friend of mine, but he was too nice. Everyone loved him. It sickened me. So one night, I invited him back to my place after a few drinks. Instead of taking a taxi, I convinced him to take the train. While waiting for the train, he was leaning up against a pillar, half drunk. I was standing behind him waiting, and when the train came, I gave him a little nudge, and that was that. After that, I couldn't stop myself. I traveled the country looking for my next victim, hiking up mountains, hanging around bridges at night, basically anywhere I could find an opportunity. People make it too easy for me. They always look over the edge like idiots, and that's when I pounce. My latest victims were a couple that were sitting on a bridge kissing. I just grabbed his ankles as I was walking past and pulled. The poor bastards were dead before they knew what happened to them. You may ask, what do I get out of this? And the answer is simple. It's just something to do, like football or basketball, a hobby. Plus, it gets me out of the house and keeps me fit. The Night Caller. This is 97.8 with Catherine in the Desert, Las Vegas's #1 late-night supernatural and macabre radio show. Now here she is. It's time to take a journey into the dark with Catherine Hart. Hello to all my believers and disbelievers out there. This is Catherine Hart. Welcome to another night of the macabre. Tonight's subject will be American serial killers. The show started as any other, guests calling in giving their opinions and theories on why each serial killer did what they did. Multiple experts made guest appearances, including the world-renowned criminal psychologist, Dr. Margaret Stonegate. During this call, a man called into the show. Hello, caller. What are your thoughts on the subject?
It's almost time, Catherine. I'm almost there. I've killed, and I'm about to kill again.
Oh boy, we got another one here, guys. Sir, we don't take crank calls here. Seek help and enjoy your night. Let's take another call, guys. Just then, Dr. Stonegate wrote something on a piece of paper and passed it to Catherine. It read, "That man may not have been lying. You should have seen what the man had to say." Catherine motioned to her producer, and they went to a commercial. "So, doctor, you think that guy could have been the real deal?" "He could have, Miss Hart. He very well could have." As the commercial ended, the show got back on track. More calls came in, and Catherine and Dr. Stonegate discussed many of the more notorious serial killers. About 30 minutes after they came back from commercial break, the man called back.
I'm even closer, Catherine. It won't be long now.
"Who is this? What is your name, sir? And where are you going?"
Oh, I can't tell you that, Miss Hart. I can't have you ruining my plans now, can I?
Dr. Stonegate then chimed in. "Sir, you said you've killed before. Is that correct?"
Ah, is this the famous Dr. Stonegate that's speaking?
"Yes, it is, sir. Can you please tell me more about yourself?"
All in good time, Doctor. All in good time. Goodbye, ladies.
The man hung up, and the women continued. Catherine wasn't too sure what to make of the situation, but Dr. Stonegate was becoming disturbed. The callers, on the other hand, were mixed, half believing the man, and the others did not. A half hour later, the man called back.
I'm at the door, Miss Hart. It won't be long now.
"Where are you?" Catherine screamed.
I'm at the stairs now, Miss Hart.
Dr. Stonegate picked up her cell phone and called the police.
I'm on the 5th step now, Miss Hart. Get ready. I'm on the 8th step now.
"Stop this now!" Catherine yelled. "Why are you doing this?"
I'm on the top step now. I'm almost there. I'm in the hall, Miss Hart.
Catherine looked over at Dr. Stonegate, panicked. Just then the lights went out in her producer's box. A loud scream was heard, and a splatter of blood splashed across the glass. The two women screamed, and the connection went dead. When the police arrived, the bodies of the three were found dismembered. On the walls, written in blood, read, "It won't be long. Until next time." Wish I stayed home. As the cold winter wind howled through the empty streets, Mary huddled deeper into her coat, wishing she had stayed home. She had stayed late at the office, trying to finish a project, and now she was regretting it. She had heard rumors of a serial killer on the loose, preying on lone women after dark. Mary quickened her pace, her eyes darting around nervously. She was almost home, just a few more blocks. She could see the warm glow of her porch light in the distance. She was so close. Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her. She spun around, her heart racing, but there was nothing there. She told herself it was just her imagination, but as she turned back around, she saw a figure standing in front of her. Its face twisted into a grotesque snarl. Mary screamed and ran, but she knew it was too late. The killer had been watching her all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I discovered my dad was a serial killer when I was 11 years old. I'd been sound asleep when I heard screaming. I stumbled out of bed, bleary-eyed and disoriented. It sounded like my mom. I crept to my bedroom door, But before I could turn the knob, the screaming abruptly stopped. A loud thud came from the basement. My mom and I were never allowed down in the basement. It was my dad's sacred space, where he tinkered with his projects. So when I made my way down the dark corridor toward the basement and saw the padlock missing and the door ajar, I knew something was wrong. The house was eerily quiet now. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the basement door. I was shaking by the time I reached the bottom of the stairs and peeked around the corner into the dim light of the lone bulb. It took a few seconds to fully register what I was seeing. It was as if I was looking into a nightmare. My dad held a hammer over my mom's lifeless body, lying in a pool of blood at his feet. Mom's eyes were wide with fear, and her mouth remained open in a silent scream. I can still remember the sour smell of death in the air. I watched in horror as my dad calmly wiped the blood off his hands. As if he had known I'd been there the entire time, he turned and looked at me. The cold, calculated look in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. There was no trace of my dad in the monster before me. I'd always known there was something off about him, but I never could have imagined this. I stood there in shock, unable to move or speak. I couldn't believe he'd done this. My mom was always so kind and loving. She didn't deserve it. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I just stood there numb, staring at my dad as he stared back at me. "Hi, Bud," he said, breaking the silence. "Not my finest work, I must say." Then, without warning, he lunged at me. That was all it took to snap me out of my trance. I bolted up the stairs and made a mad dash for the front door. I ran out of the house and down the dirt road toward town. I didn't stop running until I reached the nearest police station. They found my mom's body still in the basement, as well as the remains of at least 6 more women. My dad, however, was nowhere to be found. Any trace of him had vanished from the house, as if he'd never existed. A manhunt was launched, but to this day he has never been found. It's been 20 years, and my mom's screams and the look on my dad's face still haunt my nightmares. I live in fear that one day he'll find me and finish what he started that night. There's a serial killer in my neighborhood. Old Jebediah Worthy fell down the stairs in his house last night. An unfortunate accident, they said. Last Thursday, Myra Fisher's house burned down with her in it. We all knew cigarettes would be the death of her, but figured cancer would get to deliver the punch, not an inferno. The Monday before that, Giles Northcutt got locked in the freezer in his butcher shop. A tragic shame with a faulty lock mechanism. And on the 1st of the month, Lucy Nagel had one too many of her county-famous snickerdoodles, and her poor little heart couldn't take them anymore. 4 suspicious deaths in less than a month, and yet the police see and do nothing. How can they be so effing blind? I've tried telling people, anyone I can find. Someone is hunting the sinners in this town. The drunks, the gypsies, the sexual deviants and thieves. But they all just laugh at me. The only thing Worthy is guilty of is having sermons run on too long. If baking good cookies is a crime, then sure, lock up Lucy for life. Yeah, $7.50 for a pound of ground beef is kind of extortionate, but it's Giles. The only person Myra Fisher ever hurt was herself. But they're wrong. I know they're wrong. Jebediah Worthy is a deviant who told any young girl he could find that sleeping with him would absolve them of their sins. Myra Fisher was an alcoholic junkie who would lie, steal, and beg for her next fix. Giles Northcutt used his prices to fund his gambling addiction, and Lucy Nagel watched her mother die a slow and painful death so that recipe could be hers. She didn't even throw away the rat poison. It's stuff like that that makes me so disappointed when I see my best friend Keith drive drunk. So I decide to be a good friend to him. I buy all the rounds for him, and hell, I even offer to be his designated driver. I drop him off in his garage outside his house. I live just down the block, so no one will see me walk from his house to mine. I position him into the front seat and turn on the carbon monoxide. It finally occurs to him what's happening, but the muzzle relaxer slipped into his third brandy of the night leaves him powerless. Just before I close the door, I lean in real close and whisper to him, "I warned you." My neighbor thinks I'm a serial killer. "You are a murderer," the scrawny-looking man said. "I know you did it." I scowled. I was just about to sleep when my neighbor decided to start spouting his usual bullshit. "Look, man," I said, "can we skip this crap? I have no idea what you were talking about, and I was just sleeping." A lie, but I wanted that retard to be gone. I closed the door, but my neighbor blocked it with his foot. "You murderous freak," he spat. "I can smell the blood on your hands." I blinked. "Are you stupid? I told you 1,000,000,000 times. I am not a serial killer." He did not believe me. He never did. "Look, I'm going to sleep." I pushed my neighbor away and shut the door close. I groaned and went back to bed. "Effing neighbor," I muttered. I fell asleep half an hour later, only to wake up with someone banging on my door. I opened my eyes and found my walls painted red. The police charged into my house and found me in the middle of a pile of cut-up limbs. Blood was sprayed on all my walls. I was shell-shocked when the police arrested me. An anonymous call was made that night. Someone had seen me dragging suspicious bags into my house, the size of a person. The police decided to check it out and found me in my bedroom, surrounded by body parts and blood all over me. I tried to explain that I was innocent, but when they found a bone saw with my DNA on it, hidden underneath the floor, the jury had made his decision. As I was drafted to prison, I saw my neighbor in the crowd that had gathered outside Blackside City's court hall. As I passed him, he whispered, "Rotten jail, you psycho." He had this insane look in his eyes. As I was dragged away from him, I screamed, all the while staring at the red stains on his nails. There's a serial killer in town. There's a serial killer in town. Everyone knows it. The instructions are clear. Keep your doors locked and don't go out at night. If you do, he might get to you. For 13 people, it was too late. Don't let him inside your house, was all the police said. That was all the police could do. They already knew the serial killer's name. They knew where he lived. Yet they don't do anything. So now we are on our own. Sometimes he knocks on your door, pretends to be someone who needs help. Sometimes he just waits outside your house, smiling at you. That's why people are leaving this town. I don't blame the police for it. They did what they could. They shot him in the head and in the chest 3 months ago. And what can the police do about a ghost? Netflix, I want to be part of the serial killer documentary franchise. Netflix, I want to be a part of the serial killer documentary franchise. I have chosen what kind of killer I want to be. I am going to target males who are 7 feet tall and muscular, and who also have fighting experience. Imagine this, Netflix. Imagine a stray of dead 7 feet tall muscular males who can all fight. Imagine multiple types of these kinds of people that are all dead. How terrified would people be? Usually killers go for the weak, small, and who cannot fight. I am going for the opposite. I will be going after the gym junkies, the fighters, and the intimidating. It will cause so much uproar. I remember spotting a 7-foot-tall, muscular man walking alone late at night, and I thought that this is my start. I started following him and even went into the same gym with him. The amount of muscles he had, nobody would expect this guy to be a murder victim. Then he finished his workout and went outside. I was following him. I got my knife ready, and I could see the headlines right now. Killer of Giants, or the Giant Killer, and I was ready to go. I tried surprising him, but he grabbed a hold of me and knocked me out. I awoke alone in the street, and I was disappointed that I missed my first chance. This didn't deter me at all, and I could see my dream of being the giant killer coming true. I imagined men who weren't on my category list to be murdered. I could see their egos being hurt because they are too short and not muscular enough. Netflix, be patient with me as I am honing my craft. I will be a part of serial killer documentary franchise. I will be a different kind of killer. With me being a serial killer, women and children don't have to worry, as I am only targeting 7 feet tall muscular males with fighting experience. I will stalk the gyms, the boxing clubs, and MMA club. I found another 7-foot man who was muscular, and he was going to be the first victim, who was going to die from my hand. I tried running up to him to stab him, but he disarmed me and beat me up. I was laying on the ground coughing up blood. I'm feeling a bit disillusioned now. I thought that maybe I should just target women and weak men, but that's too unoriginal. I will not give up, Netflix. I will keep plugging away, and I'm not going to use a gun. Guns are too loud and give away too much evidence. My signature will be the silent knife. So a warning to all of you 7-foot-tall, muscular males with fighting experiences. I'm coming after you, and you will be part of the Netflix serial killer documentary franchise. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27 duchess.ofdarkness@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.